Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the anime butt lovers out there. Adam aka CS Radical here, back on YouTube for, oh god, what seems like forever. That's what happens when I get bored and don't want to make video content for a while because I'm lazy as shit. That's what happens. But yeah, we're back and trying something a little bit different. Normally I do on my blog page, csradical.com, for those who have never been there before. Usually I do a long-ass writing post for my awards for the entire anime season that was this summer, but I felt like I wanted to do something a little bit different. I felt like, well, I shouldn't even say I felt like, I just didn't want to write anything anymore. It's at the point now that, you know, I'm almost going to be coming up on 2 years in mid-November on the blog page, and it's at the point now that, you know, I did still make a couple of videos here and there, but when it came to writing stuff, I don't know, it's starting to get a little bit boring to me. I don't feel like writing 3,000 words anymore because my hands get tired. I'd rather tire out my voice because God only knows I've been wanting to use it for a while and I haven't had the chance to, or I just haven't bothered to. Some of it's laziness, some of it's destiny too, actually. At this point, most of it's destiny too. But yeah, I just finished watching all of my anime for the summer season now. Granted, it was only 6 shows that I ended up finishing, so it wasn't exactly that much, but all the episode 13s are done. At the time I'm recording this, the post is going to be, it should actually be up right now. It literally should have gone up half an hour ago to when I recorded. So what this is going to be, it's going to be more than just what my awards usually is. Usually it was just, here's the nominees, here's the winner, and here's why. I'm going to do a little bit more of a retrospective of the entire season this time around. So we're going to start off with all the shows that I dropped and why I dropped them. Then we'll get to the shows that I finished. I'll give a brief review of them. Tell you what I liked about it, tell you what I didn't like. We'll talk about a little bit of spoilers. I should probably say there is going to be a spoiler warning for... I don't know if all the shows that I watched that I dropped will get kind of spoiler warnings, because most of them were first or second episodes, but when it comes to the shows that I actually finished, this is a direct spoiler warning. I will emphasize that again, and I'm going to be timestamping everything, so that way... if you haven't finished a show and you want to make sure you get that in first, I will try to timestamp everything so that way you can kind of avoid what's going on. So anyway, right off the bat, I mean, I'm going to go through all the shows that I wanted to, or that I got interested enough to at least start. So here on the screen now, you should be seeing all the shows that I actually watched. For those who don't know me or are not familiar with how I run everything, I only watch on Crunchyroll at this point. I don't have a Netflix account. I don't have Funimation anymore, although Funimation doesn't do subs, so that doesn't really count. Anime Strike can suck it for all I care. I am not supporting that stuff with Amazon right now for many reasons. And then after that, it's... I don't feel comfortable pirating anything, and the other part of it is just that without... like with what Crunchyroll does with its simulcast, where I can constantly just open the app on my PlayStation and see what shows have released. If I was torrenting some stuff, like if I really had to pirate shows, like last season I wanted to watch Seikano, and now that it probably should be out. I should be getting around to watching it, but I keep forgetting about it. And that's the reason too, right? If I was trying to watch a simulcasted show through torrenting, I would forget. I would honestly forget until like the last possible moment, until I was writing the article and being like, oh crap, this show's left. And it's just a habit that I'm not interested in getting into. I don't want to remember to download something, whereas I can just open up Crunchyroll and it's there. And I can still get a decent number of shows in, so that I can at least get a good round in. I'm only going to end up finishing with 6 shows this entire season, and as you can see from the list, I started with 13. It could have been a lot more, but obviously shows got divvied up between the various apps, so it kind of worked out that way. A lot of it also, like, you'll probably sit there thinking, like, how did you drop that so fast? I've gotten to the point now where I've been doing this for... Well, I've been watching simulcast through the seasons for like 3 years now, but I've really only been writing about them for almost 2. And I think we're at the point now where I have no interest in forcing myself to watch shows that I'm not fully invested into. In the first few seasons that I started blogging about, I definitely gave shows a lot more leeway. It was also because at the time I was unemployed, so it was a lot easier to find time to watch shows. Now, it's a whole different story. I have a full-time job. I play usually 2 different recreational sports leagues a week, so that's another couple hours out. Obviously, Destiny 2 being a big part of my gaming life, you know, I have to keep up with that, so I've been playing that a lot. And then there's just my general social life, which in the last couple of years has increased exponentially to the point that I actually have started dropping a couple of things in my life to leave things alone, so I have a little bit more time to just kind of sit down and enjoy myself. Because especially this summer was crazy. I almost never had time off, like in terms of like any time that I could just sit and chill. I didn't have a lot of time for that because I'd either be at work, I'd either be hanging out with friends all the time. I had a couple of weddings, so that's a lot of time that takes out of you. And obviously with all this anime, like if I'm watching a ton of anime, like that's a lot of time that I'm devoting to watching, talking about it, and all that jazz. So it became really difficult to divvy up any time just to kind of just chill and watch stuff. Like I'm a big podcast guy, and I was missing so many of my favorite stuff because I just didn't have time to listen to 2 hours worth of content. So now that I've divvied up the attention or the time frames that I have for a lot more, I'm able to kind of enjoy myself a little bit more, and that gives me time to do stuff like this again, which is another reason why I wasn't YouTubing very much, just because I couldn't find time to sit for an hour or two and just record stuff, not to mention edit and render and upload and all that time that you spend with it. So I'm glad to be able to get to do this again. And going back to anime, it's kind of the same deal, where now, because I don't have as much time as that I want to give away, I'm definitely being a lot more critical of shows that I watch, and I'm definitely leaving less rope for each show. So you're going to notice that with some of these shows, like a lot of them I dropped in the first episode just because it's like, well, if this isn't for me, I'm not watching it. So yeah, so one more time, there's the list that I watch, and now as I flip the page here, anything in green is what I managed to keep and complete. Anything in red was something that I dropped at any point in time. So I guess we might as well start with the first show on our list, which was Gamers. Gamers was a show that I was convinced that I was going to like, and when I saw the OP for the first time and saw the animation for it, I'm like, okay, this is going to be pretty good. This is going to be fun. And I gave this show a lot more rope than I should have, because I believed that it could potentially become a lot better. And it also suckered me in by being an Arc System Works project, because Guilty Gear and Persona 4 Arena were getting shown off all the time. So I'm like, oh, my favorite games are friggin' on display. God damn, I gotta hang on to this show, because, you know, who knows what might come across it. But in the end, this show really didn't offer me anything, and I don't understand why a lot of people have been liking it. This season really has been a season where a lot of highly rated shows have been pure garbage to me, and a lot of shows that I absolutely adored this season got no second chances. Like, everybody just thought they're all terrible, and I don't know why. And we'll get to that when I get to the good stuff. But with Gamers, what I found was that minus the one relationship with, and I'm not going to remember the names to all of them because I dropped them. The two on the left, I believe it was. Yeah, the guy who used to be a nerd and was trying to look like a cool guy, and then the girl with the pink hair. Their relationship was really cute, and I liked that. The girl in the middle there, she also, I was kind of interested in her, and then she ended up turning into a bit of a bitchy character. I'm like, oh, okay, you're going to be that. Well, that's not fun. And then the main character was just not interesting at all. And, I mean, generally speaking, male protagonists in anime are always kind of dumb, but this guy kind of is on a level that's a lot different than others. Like, harem protagonists, like, don't even understand how this guy is this far gone. It's also the idea of the whole virgin character, which I'll get into with the next show on this that I dropped. But, like, it drives me crazy that there is such an emphasis on no one knows how to talk to each other, and then even when it has to do with their favorite hobby, they still can't do it without, you know, becoming either a total asshole or a total flake. Which also runs into the last girl on this picture, the girl on the right, who, at first I thought, okay, this is going to be a little interesting. I mean, she seems like the popular girl, yet she's really nerdy at the same time. Maybe she'll end up being really cool. And then they just turned her into this drooling, like, I want to fuck this guy kind of girl. And she kind of lost all her personality that way, because they try really hard to have comedy in the show, and the comedy just falls extremely flat so easily. Like, nothing really came off funny to me. It definitely had that that dry humor feel that some anime rom-coms try to have, but this one didn't. And considering it had the gaming theme, you figure, okay, something could have hit me pretty well, and I would have had a snicker at least out of it. But nothing really worked. And I kept trying to hang in there with it because I'm thinking, okay, it's got to get better, and then it just became high school drama bullshit. And I'm in this point now in my life where I'm old enough to realize that I don't need to be watching that shit anymore because I don't miss high school. I know in Japan, a lot of people, because of the way that they are working all the time and they almost have zero free time, is that they like to relive their old glory days in high school, and these kind of shows probably fit really well with them, but in my case, it just doesn't work. So I gave it 4 more chances than I should have, and in the end, I had to drop it because it was terrible. It didn't resonate with me at all, and it just didn't offer anything that really gave me an instinct to want to keep it. So eventually it just got to the point where I'm like, nope, I've had enough. The relationships are not that interesting. The love story they're trying to tell is not interesting. The characters themselves just really aren't that interesting. And the comedy is non-existent, which, if there's anything that gets me away from an anime, is if it's not funny. If it's meant to try to be funny and it's not funny, your lifespan is going to be extremely short. So next on the list we have Hajimete no Gal, which I had the feeling I was going to drop anyway, but it's kind of one of those, it's a lot of these shows that I have, like, I took on Keijo figuring I was going to drop it and laugh at it and whatever else and make fun of it, and it ended up being really good. So I looked at Hajimete no Gal thinking, okay, this seems like the kind of show that sounds dumb on paper, maybe it actually works. In this case it didn't, and didn't with flying colors, it failed. Like I said earlier with gamers, the whole virgin concept in anime is really bad. It's not thrown around very well, and it's written poorly. And in this show, it basically runs as its entire punchline of the entire anime. And up into, like, I dropped it after, I believe on the blog, I can't remember specifically, but I think I dropped it first week, and I just out of curiosity watched the second episode just to see if maybe it picked back up. And it was the exact same thing. The problem that I have with this anime is that it spends pretty much half the episode trying to be sexy, which, can work for some people. Like, obviously I love harem anime, so it's easy to get my attention that way. But the problem is the other half of the show was spent just making half-assed jokes about how the main character's a virgin and how his best friends are virgins and just how everybody's apparently, trying to get laid. And I'm like, okay, this could have been funny, but when they basically bludgeon you over the head with that punchline over and over again, it doesn't work. At least for me, it didn't work. After like the 5th time they did it, it was like, okay guys, I get it, he's a virgin, he wants to get laid, and this girl is like apparently the easiest shot, which is also a bit of a frustrating concept, because it's like, I know such a thing does exist in real life, but I figure we're in this day and age where we try not to make light of that, but the anime tries to, and they don't really do the best job of not being blatant about it, and not in a good way either. So it was the kind of show that it just never really connected with me at the start. The art wasn't even enough to keep me somewhat interested, because sometimes ecchi anime can have that effect on me, where at least the drawing is good enough that I'm curious enough to at least give it a second try to see if the story picks up. But in this case, just nothing grabbed me, so it was a very easy drop for me, and as far as I've seen, it never really improved. Next up was the most painful one to drop, because I cannot believe that this anime did not have the intelligence to understand how they were fucking it up so badly. And that's Isekai Shokudou. This show, for the first half of the season, seemed amazing to me. There's a lot of interesting characters. Aletta was really interesting. I really wanted to see more of the dragon girl from the first episode, and then obviously, and I'm forgetting her name already, and I don't know how I am, because she was the one reason that kept me watching it for a couple more episodes, but the other girl you see on the right there with the elf ears, she's also a dragon for some reason. I can't remember her name right now. But she got me interested because, it was that non-expressive personality that always meshes really well with hyper-bubbly personalities like Aletta has. So I figured, okay, it's going to be kind of in the same retrospect as Ruri and Kirino were from Oraimo. I figured it was going to be that kind of dynamic between the two, and they never ended up really crossing paths and doing anything with each other. And that was the major problem that I had with the anime altogether, in that I thought that this anime was eventually going to pick up and have somewhat of a lighthearted slice of life storyline to it, and instead of just being an episode where every half episode was a new character being brought into the fold with a new dish. And there was only, I think, out of the entire 10 episodes I watched, there was one half episode where they actually went away from that formula, which is when Aletta was trying to find work, and she ended up getting a job as a housekeeper for one of the characters that comes to the restaurant on a regular basis. And that was a really fun episode. I love that episode. It was what I wanted from the show, because after the first half of the season, by episode 6, I felt that we had more than enough characters to run with. And if you wanted to put some extras in there, you could have, but you didn't need to devote a whole episode to them. But they just kept doing with the same formula. And you know, with any form of entertainment in general, if you run with the same formula over and over again, it's going to get boring. And in the case of Isekai Shokudou, that's basically what happened. It got to the point where I'm like, I'm seeing the same thing every episode. Why should I be interested in watching this anymore? There wasn't anything to go with. There was no comedy. Hell, there wasn't even really any ecchi beyond like the times the dragons were naked walking into the restaurant, or Aletta taking a shower in like the first episode. Like there's nothing to take any side of the spectrum and keep them there. There wasn't enough for comedy to keep them in there. There wasn't enough ecchi to keep them in there. Really, the only people that must have finished the show were people either who like anything or people who just really wanted anime food porn, and that's kind of what they got from the show. Like, they do a really good job like drawing dishes and stuff. It's really well done in that aspect, but there's nothing interesting about it. There's no life to it. The biggest slight that I have against the anime is that they don't explain anything about the restaurant's origins. They don't explain how it got there. And if they do in the last 2 episodes or whatever, like, I'm sorry, but I shouldn't have to wait an entire season to find out something as basic as that. It should have been something that was asked early on, and it never gets addressed. And if it was addressed at the end, I'm sorry, but I don't care. It doesn't save the anime from the boredom that was episodes 7 through 9, and then 10, which maybe drop it. There's so many things that I wanted to know. I wanted to know how the restaurant was interconnected with the world. Like, how did this dimensional rift opened up? Like, what's the, how did the main chef, come to know about this, and how did he adjust to it? There's nothing about that. And then when you go, like I said, with the episode that Aletta finds work in her own world, why the heck did the show decide to keep introducing more characters instead of developing more character growth and relationships with all these characters that we've already seen in the first 6 episodes? I never understood that. And because of that, along with just it being the same formula over and over again, I got tired of it. And by episode 10, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to drop a show with like 2 episodes left, but I have to do it because this show doesn't deserve to be in my attention anymore because it's not trying. And that's how I felt about the show. Followed by that was Katsugeki Touken Ranbu, which I have never dropped a show that looks so good. That, like, UFO Table is easily the best animating studio out there. Tales of Zestiria the X was just an unbelievably looking anime, and even though it wasn't the greatest anime, its art style really helped me go past that. Touken Ranbu just, it never really resonated with me, and a lot of shows that have essentially an all-male cast do that to me, because I've said it over and over again. Anime characters, when it comes to guys, they're generally extremely boring, and they're devoid of personality, and the show tries to put some personality in them, but none of them ever really come across to me. Like, they're all just, like, goofy, or, like, they just hate everything, which to me can only get you so far. I kind of want to see a little bit more depth in that, and it probably runs into that later on, but in the first couple of episodes, it never really got anywhere with me. And because of that, it made it really easy to drop. Obviously, the battle scenes were kind of cool, but I felt like they didn't go as far as I would have liked them to, so even then, it wasn't that interesting. The story with this time, like, I guess, time war sort of thing, they're trying to change the past to alter the future, and all. It's anime when it comes to time travel, it almost never works. It's so hard to do that without fucking up. And even anything in general, when it comes to time travel, it's so easy to screw up. So it was already behind the gun as it was, and because none of the characters grabbed my attention after a couple episodes, and the story wasn't going anywhere, and really all that the show had going for it was its gorgeous artwork. And unfortunately, artwork can only get you so far, which some shows have shown to me in the past before, and in the case of Touken Ranbu, it was the same story. There just wasn't enough there to keep me interested. Moving on, this was a really easy drop. Nanamaru Sanbatsu, which I was kind of annoyed by because I wanted it to be something cool, because When I was in high school, I did something called Reach, which for those in Canada, you might have known of the TVO game show Reach for the Top, which was a bunch of high schools that would do trivia tournaments, and it was kind of like a quiz show sort of deal. So I figured, okay, it's an anime about quiz games. That sounds like it could be fun. And it turned out to be what Kuroko no Basket and Haikyuu and all these other like crazy intense sports shows are. I don't get them, and I've had people like try to rake me over the coals for not liking Kuroko no Basket and shows like that. The problem is I can never understand what the allure of the I'm going to have an outer body experience and talk about how intense this 1 second moment is for 3 minutes. It doesn't work with me. It annoys the crap out of me because I'm sitting there thinking, just get on with it. I want to just go, get on with it. Go. What I was kind of hoping from the show, instead of what we got, is I wanted like something cool, like it was an actual like quiz show. Like there were going to be actual questions to answer, stuff I could have taken from it. 'Cause in the same way that like I learned stuff from Persona 3, 4, and 5, I actually learned things that I didn't know before because of all the questions you would get through class in that game. And I thought the show could have done that by having a bunch of interesting questions about Japanese history, the culture, other stuff outside the world, because obviously when it comes to quiz games, you kind of got to know stuff outside your country. So I thought that would have been a cool idea, and they just kind of went in the same direction of a, like I said, Kuroko no Basket sports show, which never resonates with me and never works, and I don't care how much people like it. It doesn't work with me. It's not for me. So that was a very easy show to drop. And then there was this fucking show. I sat there looking at the prospect of a Stan Lee anime. In the Reflection Wave 1, I thought, how the hell can this go wrong? What a cool idea. A superhero anime that Stan Lee is a member of. This can only be good. At the very least, it's going to be average. It'll be above average. And as far as I'm concerned, I looked at this show and I'm like, okay, this could be like my favorite show of the season, maybe even the year, if it's done well enough. And as it turns out, it sounds like to me, I don't know what the actual specifics were of it, but if I was to have an opinion on it, I think this was something that just Stan Lee put his name on and didn't actually supervise at all. Because what I saw was not a product that even, like, I've seen Newgrounds animations that I would actually prefer to watch over this. The animation did not look good to me at all. It looked terrible. It's some of the worst animation I've ever seen, and I've seen some real shit. And not only that, but there's no explanation to what's going on. The story is so haphazardly told in that first episode. The music is not that great, and just nothing is interesting about it. It was devoid of any personality, which you figure for a comic book anime, it would be so easy to put into. It would be so easy to have it being full of life, brimming at the fucking tip of it. And at the end of the day, nothing. I sat there trying so hard to not just hit the circle button on my PlayStation 4 controller and turn it off. I finished it and I regret doing that. Because that was time I'm never getting back. And it seems to be universally canned as a terrible show. And I have not heard anything from anybody that mentions anything about it getting better, because I've been led to the speculation that no one's finished this show. I'd love to know who actually finished this anime. And I want to know if they're a masochist or not, because I feel like you'd have to be one to watch it. So yeah, it was a super easy drop. And then last but not least on our drop list for the season was Youkai Apartment no Yuuga na Nichijou, which could have been a decent anime, and I kind of had the feeling that it was going to be a drop anime when I got it, because I've had a really hard time getting into yokai anime. Anything about yokai has been a tough sell for me. The only closest one that we've had that was decent was the Morose Mononokean. That one at least had enough cuteness and interesting characters to keep me invested, whereas this one, other than the three birds with their voices, that was the only thing that had me somewhat interested in that show. Everything else, just nothing grabbed me at all. The main character is completely devoid of personality. The Exorcist girl just wasn't interesting at all. The writer dude kind of reminded me of like that weird Luffy guy that just he's kind of just a big weirdo. He was somewhat interesting, but it couldn't be recovered by the fact that the show was writing there was no existing storyline. Like everything it was so devoid of personality. It was just being like, look at how cool it is to be living under this roof with all these ghosts and stuff, and wouldn't it be scary or wouldn't it be neat? And I'm just like, I don't care, tell me a story. And it never really does anything. The comedy is really flat. It just, nothing really drew me in, and I gave it 3 episodes, which, you know, I don't regret that so much, because I mean there was some potential in it, and I felt like even after I dropped it, I thought, okay, it could still get good and maybe it improves, but there just wasn't anything tangible for me to kind of latch onto and help me try to keep with it. It's a show that had I known what I was walking into, I would have dropped it first week, but I felt there was something there that could have at least kept me somewhat interested, and it, you know, after 2 more episodes, it never went that way. So we're going to get on to stuff that I finished, 6 of them. Right off the bat, 18F. One of those shows this season that I do not understand why people didn't like. I think the last time I checked my anime list, it was like a 6.4, maybe a 6.8. And I sat there thinking, really, you gave gamers an 8 and you're giving this show a 6? Really? What the hell are you watching? I looked at 18F as a show that took an unbelievably different artistic direction with things that we're normally used to seeing. For those who don't know what the show is, 18F is basically what you get when you have a character that... Oh, and by the way, I guess I should preface this now that we're at the completed shows. Every show that I'm about to speak to, the 6 shows that are here, you'll see the timestamps of them in the description so you'll know what shows I'm talking about. There will be full spoilers to these 6 shows. I'm going to talk absolutely candidly about them. I'm not making separate videos to do this. I'm doing absolutely full reviews of these shows, which means I will talk extensively about spoilers that happen, including in this show, which has some pretty major spoilers in this, so you have been warned. For the last time, there are major spoilers going on here. So anyway, 18F is a show where you take a character who has been in a coma for an extended period of time and is living in this dream world as a manifestation of the goddess Eve. If you want to look at her as a goddess anyway. Basically what this dream world is a manifestation of Eve after eating the apple from the tree of knowledge, I believe it's called. I'm not a religious person, so I don't pay attention to those things very much. And what happens is, I don't know, they don't really explain if it's a normal thing for guys to fall into, but it's a very normal thing for women to fall into a coma or a deep sleep, and they ended up calling it Sleeping Beauty Syndrome, which unfortunately is not cured by a kiss from a prince, so that option didn't work. But basically they manifest themselves into this dream world. They're called witches, and they have their own specific worlds that they live in as a manifestation of what they want their lives to be, as they're escaping from a reality that they don't like or has been really hard on them. For example, there's one girl that's dealing with I wanted to say it was bulimia, but it sounded like it was the opposite. Like if she ate, she lost weight for some reason. I'm trying to remember that part of the episode. I remember it being something like that. But like, she lives in this dream world where she can eat as much candy as she fucking wants, and it doesn't matter. That's why I kind of thought maybe she gains weight really easily. I don't know. There's a character who has never experienced first love, and I guess I'm gonna go right into this. 3rd episode, there was Yuko, who is this girl that was terminally ill, and she, obviously, when you're a young male or female and you know you're dying, there's so many things you want to experience, and if you're a teenager, like, one of those major things is your first love, and she never got that. So she ended up falling into a deep sleep because of the desire to, you know, experience that first love with something that she at least wanted to experience before she died, because she was going to die. And Haruto, the main character, he's essentially the person that saves all these girls, who is this guy in a coma this entire time, who can visit all these worlds. And the first couple episodes we watched, like, it's just him solving, you know, getting past these, what almost look to be like violent people. The first witch is killing people off, like, effortlessly. The second girl is like on this major revenge plot for these 3 guys that brutally murdered her family, and she brutally murders them in return. And it seems to to translate into real life, which never really gets explained afterwards. It's the only episode that the dream world and the real life really intertwine before the final episodes where Eve wakes up and the world nearly, devolves into the apocalypse. But the third episode is a much more lighthearted episode where, he gets close to Yuko, and eventually, like, she does have that falling for him feeling and shares that moment. And rarely does an anime get me emotional, but seeing her just disappear into a cloud of, like, sparkle, and we now know that she passed on, that she passed away, and that was a really tough episode for me to take, because she was easily the most likable character I'd seen, in anime in a long time. She was perfectly relatable. She came off very human, very normal, in a sense, when most anime girls tend to be extreme exaggerations of various tropes, various personality quirks, like all that stuff. She came off as a legitimately real girl, and one that I could totally understand, like, if people look at her as best girl or as their waifu in terms of the anime speak, I completely understand that, because she's probably one of the most real anime characters I've come across in a long time, and that episode was really difficult. Thankfully, she does return. I guess apparently in the dream world, or even in the real world, she's able to manifest, like, her soul is still around, so she's even able to text the characters during the final episodes, which was weird, and they didn't really explain that. But as the anime goes on, there's a few other cool characters in there. There was the girl who has, like, the fairy wings, and she goes into full-on guitar solo, which I was really annoyed by, because the riff that she plays on the guitar when she does it is not even a really decent riff. Like, I was wanting somebody to, like, get Marty Friedman in there, because he's big in Japan there when it comes to doing guitar work for various anime. Get him in there and do some crazy solo stuff. But instead it was, like, this very generic guitar sound, which is like, oh, come on, guys. Have some fun with it. But there was a lot of cool stuff in there. As we got to the end, we start to understand that Haruto is in a much more dangerous situation than we first thought. Like, they finally find him, and apparently he's dead, and we're left to wonder how much time he's actually been in this coma for. And it seems like he hasn't aged, because we've seen that with the one girl who is a figure skater, who actually was in this coma for what seemed like 30-40 years, because when she wakes up finally, like, she's manifested as, like, a teenage woman, and when she wakes up from the coma, she is, like, old as shit. She looks like she's 60-70 years old. Full on gray hair, just disheveled face, like, everything. And we see her later on at the end of the series, and, okay, so she looks like, she's definitely a grandma age, for sure. And that was a cool idea, so I'm thinking, okay, so time does affect these people, but apparently for Haruto, it didn't go that way. So there's that question of how long has he been asleep for, and how has nobody noted that this guy doesn't seem to be aging? And as we come to learn, as he defeats all the witches, and his last task is now to kill Eve, because Eve is now woken up because he's awakened all these witches, and now she's frustrated because her entire defense is gone. So her only idea of dealing with the job is just, destroying everything, I guess. It's then that we start to see a lot more story plot. Like, we start to see that church, and there's that doctor that we never really understand who he is. And unless there's somehow a second season coming for it, I don't know what the significance of this doctor was supposed to be, because he looked like he had this sinister role to them. Like, I kept thinking, is he the fucking devil or something? Like, what's going on? But that's never really explained. What we essentially have the sense of is that obviously we know who Eve is, and there's the speculation, and even the characters noted at the final moments of the series, that perhaps Haruto is Adam, as in Adam and Eve. And we know that Lily, the younger girl that was with Haruto the entire series, was Eve before she ate the apple, so it's the innocent version of Eve. Whereas the Eve that we see at the end is I want to fucking destroy everything because of what God did to me, because God basically kicked me out of heaven and treated me like shit and all this other stuff. And I thought it was going to be this really cool, like, mysterious, like, finish to the series, and what we got in the final episode actually, I think, was a better idea than what I ever could have thought it was, because essentially how Eve is thwarted from sending the world into apocalypse is that all the witches come back and they have a girl talk. That's it. All the witches come together in the world and they just talk about boys and how they're terrible, and they eat cake and drink tea. That's how they stop Eve from destroying the world. So that was funny. I love that. I'm sitting there thinking, oh my god, they're seriously ending this show by having the girls save her through girl talk. That's amazing. I love that. That's why I love anime, because of the absurdity of it. But to finish off, there was a little bit of a frustration that I had where after everything that we'd seen, we wanted Haruto to wake up. We wanted, him to be able to see these girls in real life and as the person who saved them. And we come to the idea that maybe he would have just straight up died because he was already dead. There was no way of knowing. So apparently he just decides to go with Eve into heaven, at least what we're perceiving as heaven. And by the end of the episode, they talk about how they theorize that he's Adam and all that stuff, but they note that he never returned. He promised them that he would return to the dream world, and that's why I assume there's maybe a second season. I don't know what they would do with it, because they've pretty much closed up all the loose ends other than the fact that, who is Haruto and what's all this stuff about. But essentially, he never comes back. So the show just ends with, oh yeah, he's in heaven, but the girls never see him again. And it's like, well, that's kind of anticlimactic, isn't it? But yeah, I really enjoyed the show altogether, though. Despite of some of the weird little shortcomings of it, I love the show. And in the end, it was a 4.5 star rating for me. Definitely one of the top shows this season. I don't understand why people hate this show. I don't get it. I really don't get it. The different art styles that some of the episodes had, there's a lot of work put into the show. I just don't get it. It's one of those things that I try to understand why people hate the things they do or why they like the things they do, and I'm never going to understand it. It's one of those shows that I feel like everybody should have liked and nobody did. Even though it tells what I think is some really good stories. They tell some really good personal stories. They have people that overcome bullying and bulimia and all these other these real things, and it never really grabbed anybody, and I don't get it, because it seemed like the kind of anime that anybody could get into and anybody could really like, and just nobody got onto that train. And I guess I'll be happy being the one guy who's really talking about it as dude, watch this fucking show. So, moving on. Aho Girl, which, after episode 1, I'm like, okay, this is going to be top tier the entire season. The absurdity of the show. It's like Azumanga Daioh on crack, on cocaine. Essentially, this show is even more hyperactive than Azumanga Daioh is. I love this show to tears. Oh my god. The first few episodes especially, I was dying laughing. Because, I knew that the show, based on the way that they told the story, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a pretty silly comedy. I didn't understand just how balls-on insane it was actually going to be. And it ended up being some of the funniest stuff I've watched in a while. In fact, that episode that I was telling you guys about a second ago with 18If, the episode where Yuko passes away, Aho Girl literally saved me from being a freaking wreck, because I'm like, oh my god, I'm freaking destroyed by this show right now. And I hadn't watched any shows yet. Because Aho Girl was usually the first show I'd watch, but I was watching, I think, 4 or 5 shows in one day, and I just ended up going backwards, or I ended up going from the most recent posts. And Aho Girl was way at the bottom. So with 18F, I'm like, okay, this is really stressing me out now. I'm really depressed after watching this episode. Turned on Aho Girl, and in an instant, I'm like, okay, I'm happy again. We're good. This show is a perfect, get out of depression free card. It was perfect for that. It really balances out some of the more real and saddening shows that stuff like 18F could do, especially Centaur's life with one specific episode, which I'll get into later. But yeah, the show was absolutely balls on crazy. Yoshiko she has the same kind of annoying voice that Umaru does from Himuto or Maru-chan, except Yoshiko at least, has some redeeming qualities in that, her stupidity just, you can't not smile from it, especially when it comes to her interacting with the dog, especially, and then working with oh my god, what's the main character's name now? Whatever, I'll think of it later probably. But working with the main character, and just the two of them worked off each other so well, especially, you know, naturally when he's uppercutting the crap out of her. Other characters like, I think her first name is Aincho, because I think her last name is Fuka. It could be the opposite. I can't remember off the top of my head, because I don't think they actually use her name very often, because they just keep calling her class president or president, because that's how she is. Or disciplinary committee, or I can't remember what they specifically called her. She was also great too, because she's essentially like the one girl in the harem that is literally dying to take his pants off and just jump his bones. She's just stalking him in every way, and you know, she's trying to act like she doesn't think that there's anything that she's doing that's wrong, even though like you're staring at her thinking, dude, everything you're doing is wrong. Yoshiko's mom was also pretty entertaining. The main character's little sister had her moments. The one girl that just didn't stand out was the other best friend, the innocent girl. She just doesn't work in that kind of show. It just, you could tell that they try to have her there to balance things out, but they didn't need to. The show didn't need any balancing act. Other than that, the gal girls were also really entertaining, especially the pink hair girl. I was rooting for her to suddenly fall in love with the main character a little bit, even though I wanted Incho to Incho. This is the thing with Japan. I kind of started to have the dialogue down a little bit. I can guess the names pretty well, and then there's names that I'm like, crap. There were like 3 different ways this is. I can't figure out which one's right. But you know, the gal girls were really good, and like I said, the comedy is just freaking fantastic. There really aren't any spoilers I can get into with this one, because it literally is just a 4-coma kind of show. It's just sketch after sketch after sketch. There's nothing really story-wise that you need to know, other than mom's trying to keep any other girl from getting close to the main character, because Yoshiko is so stupid that he's the only person that she's close to, and God, if she can't get married to him, she's screwed for the rest of her life, so mom's gonna have to deal with her forever. So that show is definitely one of my favorite shows. That's also a 4.5-star show, easily. The only reason that it isn't 5 is because by the time I got to about episode 9, some of the comedy started wearing off, because as funny as that show is, you can only do the same joke so many times before eventually it's like, okay, that's a snicker more instead of a laugh. I never really had an episode that I hated. There were a couple episodes, though, that by the end I was not nearly as invested as I was originally. So, that was that. Let's move on to Centaur no Nayami, A Centaur's Life. That's a show that I wanted to drop really badly a few episodes before it ended. I might as well jump right into it. For those who don't know, there was an episode where half of it was essentially the Holocaust in Monster Girl form, which was quite uncomfortable. But as I said in my blog post about it, I refused to drop it as much as I wanted to, because based on my political views at this point, like for example the Charlottetown thing, or the Charlottesville, I believe that any historical event, any historical statue, any artifact from history needs to be kept in full view, because I believe that we need to be using that history as a way to understand that this is how we used to be, and these are the things that we need to make sure that we don't replicate. They're things to learn from. And in the sense of Centaur no Nayami to have a Holocaust episode, as much as I want to drop it, it'd be hypocritical of me to say that, because it's something that we shouldn't be ignoring, and any way that we can tell people about this kind of stuff and make them realize how terrible it actually was, it's another way for us to teach younger people that this was the horrors of our history and things that we should never repeat. It didn't belong in a show like this, but then again, given the political aspirations of the show and given the societal views it tries to push, you know, with racism, sexism, homosexuality, stuff like that, like it tries to take a very politically correct position on things and tries to talk about it. And I don't know if this show is the best way to do it. I mean, they could have done it with this type of show, with a Monster Girl show, but the problem is the characters that they gave them it didn't mix. They didn't really have a cast of characters that could push that, because you had too many girls that were too goofy for it. The message was going to get lost. I mean, as much as I love Nozomi and Kyoko, it wouldn't have worked with them. Kyoko's like personality wouldn't work with it, and Nozomi being a very tomboyish character, it wouldn't work with that message either. It just didn't mesh. Like if you had a bunch of Manamis, it could have worked, but because of the nature of the show, with it being a lighthearted comedy at times, an ecchi comedy at times, you know, a serious look on it would not have worked, and it didn't work at times. It didn't fit. But the show itself was not bad. I actually liked a lot about the show. As goofy and sometimes really weird and disturbing it was, like, I don't know, like the girls checking out the genitalia of Hime, you know, her being a centaur and all, that was a little weird. But there were other stuff that was definitely interesting. And obviously, like I said, I really like Kyoko and Nozomi. They were both great characters. I enjoyed the crap out of them. And the last episode of the entire series, which was basically fan service up the wazoo and making fun of old school JRPGs, I was down for that. I was totally down for that episode, and I loved it. The show, when it wants to actually be a lighthearted slice of life with monster girls, can be a really good show. But when it tries to take it seriously and go in a more political and societal direction, it just didn't work. It didn't mesh. And that's why shows like interviews with demigirls, or Demi-chan wa Karitai, I think I'm trying to remember what the full title was. I think there might be a syllable I'm missing in there, but that was one really good example. And then, hell, there's even Monster Musume, which I don't care what anybody says, that show was freaking entertaining. It was just a balls-on dumbass harem comedy, and it worked. Whereas Centaur no Nayami tries to be two things at once. It tries to be a lighthearted slice of life, but it tries to be a real let's talk about politics and societal stuff at the same time, and they don't mesh. You can't do lightheartedness and then suddenly be really serious at the same time. It will never work out. But all in all, like, I really did like the show for what it was. There was a few good episodes here and there. Some of the characters were really fun. So but it just didn't mesh as much as it could have, and because of that, it's a 3-star show. It's not a bad show by any means. It's a good show. It's above average, but there was a lot I wanted to see out of it that it took time out of its way to talk about issues that it didn't need to. And because of that, it really brought the show's rating down a bit. If it was just a lighthearted comedy, it definitely would have hit 4 stars, and it might have hit more than that. But because it tried to do things that just were not going to work with it, it causes the rating to go down quite a bit. Next up, we have Isekai wa Smartphone to Tomo ni, which I can't remember what the full title is, but it's basically like the guy's living in a fantasy world, and you know, he passes away, and when he meets God, and God says, okay, well, you get to take one thing with you into this world. What do you want? And you can have anything, whether it's a lot of money, you could just change your body to look a lot better. And he's just like, no, give me my smartphone. And it ends up coming as like this super OP piece of technology. And a lot of people didn't like the show either, and I don't understand why. Although I half understand how people could get a little disinterested in it, because it does what a lot of silly anime tries to do, where it just makes the main character like just ridiculously overpowered. But the problem is, with that line of thinking, I actually enjoyed that for this show. I love the fact that basically every problem the main character walks up to, it's just like, whoa, what's that? There's this giant army. Okay, let me just take my phone to find every single enemy on the map. I'll mark them all, and with my magic, I'll just strike them all in one blow and not have to worry about anything. Oh, problem solved. Or in the case of some of the things like, oh, this person's really ill, but the only way to cure them is with this one spell that has been lost upon us for 1,000 years. It's a specific skill. Like, the entire idea of magic in this show is that you cannot master all elements. Most people can only master one, and he obviously can master all of them. Then there's these specific spells that one person has only ever known, and he's just like, well, what's the spell do? And they tell him what it does. He's like, okay, I'll cast the spell right now, and just knows how to do it. Like, he has affinity to learn everything. So any problem he walks up to, they say, oh, but we need this, but nobody's been able to do this for 1,000 years, and he just does it, and that solves the problem. It's amazing. I loved it, because it was so stupid, and I enjoyed the fuck out of that. And then, not to mention, like I said earlier, me being the harem guy that I am, it's really easy to enjoy a show like this, where it's literally every girl wants a piece of him. And even in this case, the anime does something, and this is what I'm going to get into, is the major point of why I like this show. Unlike most harem animes, anybody who's watched a lot of harem shows, like, one of my favorite shows is Infinite Stratos, but the biggest problem that I have with Infinite Stratos is that even after 2 seasons, there's still nobody who's really fully made headway with Ichika. You could say that Hoki, being the childhood friend, is the favorite of getting his undying love. I still say Charlotte was probably the closest, because she's the one that actually he can relate to, because there was that time that she spent with him disguised as a male where he felt a much of a kinship with her. But either way, like, the thing with that show and a lot of harem animes is that they always end the same. No one is remotely close to having the love of the main character, because ideally what the writers and producers of these shows want to do is they want to make sure that every girl by the end of that show is still single, or at least it's not 100% certain that she is taken, because that way these characters are still available, quote unquote available, to all these, you know, viewers that, you know, they want to dream about her being their wife, which I'm probably going to make a video outside of that talking about that a lot more in depth. But the simplest thing I can tell you is they are fictional, even if they're married in the anime. You know you can dream about them not being married. It's relatively easy. But yeah, the thing that this show does different from almost every anime is that the main four girls, by the time the show ends, it's pretty much set in stone that they will all be marrying the main character, because in that world, it's much like how it would be in the past, where it was normal to have multiple wives and that kind of stuff. And what the show does is it openly talks about how the constant trope of anime girls never confessing their love, never really mentioning it. The main character is still dumb as fuck and can't figure out that any of these girls are in love with him, and I don't know how, because, you know, like I said, anime male characters are stupid as shit. But, like, for example, Yumina, the youngest of the bunch, she is supposedly engaged to him based on what the royal family wants to do. She wants to be engaged to him, and he doesn't fully agree to it, and for legitimate reasons. He's like, look, I don't know how old they are in the anime. I assume it's like 14, like most of these characters end up being. But he's like, dude, I'm like a teenager. I'm not ready for this shit. You kidding me? And he tries to stray off of it. But Yumina understands that she can't compete with these other three girls. If they compete, she probably will lose. And her thought is, well, it's relatively normal in this world to have multiple wives. I'm okay with this. And straight up says to the other three girls, like, look, you know, instead of us fighting over him over and over again, why don't we just agree to all take his attention? And all of them, by the end of the anime, confess that they do love him, which, again, is a huge thing, because that rarely happens in anime. It's implied that all the girls love him, and that the main character probably likes all of them, but none of them really usually confess. And the fact that we got not just one of them, but four of them to do so, and you even have, like, there are straight up kisses, and it's pretty much implied that by the time the camera goes off that, you know, at some point that somebody's going to be jumping into that bed. You know what's happening. And you just hope it's not Yumina, because then that's extremely illegal. But, you know, c'est la vie. But that's what I liked about the show. The show, it doesn't take any... You know, you don't have to turn your brain on to think about these things. And that's why I usually watch anime, to turn my brain off and just enjoy stuff. And that show does that, with the OP character just coming in and destroying everything in one fell swoop. And then on top of that, I don't get frustrated being like, okay, well, it's clearly obvious that every girl likes him, and none of them are making the advance, even though they know that there's three others right next to them that at any time could jump forward and take him from them. Whereas in this case, even Lean, who... Apparently we learned that Toya, the main character, is going to have 9 wives by the time it's all over. And Lean looks to be one of them. But she even tells, like, the girls, like, look, you're being ridiculous if you're gonna play this game with him and never actually tell him that you love him. Like, that's essentially what she says, which is the biggest thing that I have against female characters in harem anime, is that you can't sit there and get mad at this guy for not recognizing your feelings if you refuse to tell him that you also have those feelings. So that show was really good on that format for me. It was fun to watch every episode. There wasn't really a downer episode. There was a lot of good episodes, and there were some really fucking funny ones. So with that, show is a 4.5 star easily. So much to like about the show. It's another one of those shows that I'm like, okay, I don't know why people like it. I get why some could, I guess, could be put off by it, but to me, it's if you can get past a harem show, this is definitely one of those shows that I would strongly suggest you give a shot, and just turn your brain off. Don't think about the fact that this guy just gets to learn every spell. Don't even think about it. Just watch and enjoy it for what it is. Alright, next on our list, Jikan no Shihaisha, or Chronos Ruler. This was a show that, when I did my list of shows that I was going to end up watching on Crunchyroll, I looked at that show and I was positive that it was going to be a drop show. Because of the way that it looked, you know, obviously, it being a more action-packed anime with some weird, like, time mechanics, you know, with time being eaten and controlling time, and that, like, I figured, okay, this is probably going to be a show that I might get a couple episodes out of and then be like, yeah, this just isn't worth my time. And then the first episode hit. The art on it made me feel like I was playing Persona 3 all over again with the way the horror logs look. The music was fantastic, especially the OP. The Foxtail OP is so good. The characters are really entertaining. Like, all four main characters in this show are fantastic in their own ways. Victo, they kept calling him Victo for the longest time, and then all of a sudden it started being Victor, and I'm like, what the hell, like, what changed? So I'm guessing his real name is Victor, and they've just been calling him Victo for a while. I don't know why. But Victor was, like, the super happy-go-lucky guy who, you know, he's a very much of a lady killer. He's a ladies' man, just wants to, you know, flirt with everybody. You had Kiri, his son, who is basically the I'm the super serious guy who's going to touch his glasses every couple of minutes and get mad at anyone who's not taking whatever they're doing seriously. You had Blaze, who is just the stupid ass, like, guy who just wants to punch everything and tries to... The best part about Blaze is he wants to be a villain, yet he's the biggest softie ever, so he's incapable of doing it. Like, he hears a sob story and he just starts bawling because he's like, that's so sad, man. I feel your pain. Even though he's like, I'm the biggest villain ever. I'm like, I think you need to learn what a villain's supposed to be. But it was that dynamic about him that made him really entertaining. And last but not least, she had Mina, who, minus her darling over-the-top stuff, which I don't know what the hell is with darling right now. Like, did everybody watch Monster Musume and think that's what our main female characters need to be like? Just constantly going, darling. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But she was still extremely interesting, especially by the end of the anime, where it's definitely implied that she's Victor's wife, even though there's speculation at the start of the series that she's not, that she's faking it and she's something she's not. She's trying, maybe she's a horolog. Like, I even sat there thinking maybe she's a fucking horolog that's trying to, you know, pose as Victor's wife or something like that. And I still have my suspicions that even though they say that she's just got the blood of Azradar, she's got the blood of the Chronos, I still kept thinking, I wonder if she's still somehow a horolog in all this. And with her being a pretty much implied second season to the show, maybe that possibility is still there. I doubt it at this point, but we'll see what happens. But she got really entertaining by the end of the series, because once it was out of that she was his, like, Kiri's mother and Victor's wife, she suddenly got really fucking, like, I'm gonna kick your ass, like, style, and she got really entertaining, especially how she deals with the final villain that she encounters solo, and she straight up kills, and holy crap is she scary as shit when she does it. In terms of the show altogether, the one thing I'll say right off the bat that frustrated me is that the girl that shows up in the first episode, other than in a flashback, she doesn't really appear again, and I really liked her look. I thought she was really cool, and it's kind of strange how she just disappears off the face of the planet. You know, I figured, okay, she's going to be this girl that joins them on their journey after a while, and after the first episode, she just doesn't ever show up ever again. Even though she's in a flashback, which I didn't understand why, because it's not like she does anything. Like, she's just a character that's there to introduce how Victor and Kiri have their powers. But nothing ever comes out of her, and she's designed in a way that you would have thought she was a main character, because she's got a very specific style of clothing, her hair is a little unique, I think she had red eyes. So she has, like, these very prominent features in what comes to anime characters. It's not like she was just this plain old, you know, black hair, you know, blue, like, brown-eyed girl who is just in a regular school uniform. Like, there was a lot very unique about her. So I figured there was something going on. But in the end, like, there was nothing. She doesn't come back, and that kind of frustrated me. In terms of the story, though, as it got further and further down the line, like, I was a little annoyed as the show went on that a lot of villains were being killed off way too quickly. I thought they defeated... I was hoping Bill was the end villain, because Bill was such a cool character to me. He had that maniacal laugh and look to him, that smile, that sadistic smile, and just the idea that he was looking at the world as a video game at his fingertips. I thought that was such a cool idea, and I thought that would have been a cool end villain, but they took him out in one episode, and then he suddenly returns just to be eaten by the main boss and have his time taken. And he's just, no one makes note of it. It's just, yeah, he dies. It's like, but he was so cool. Why would you do that? That's the one frustrating that I have with the show, is that anything that they should have focused on, they didn't. They tossed it aside. Like, there were some decent villains in there. And same with the girl from the first episode. Like, there were some interesting characters there that they never really develop. And now that Bill is dead, and I'm left to assume that this main girl from the first episode isn't coming back. She was just a placeholder. That's a little frustrating. I was hoping for a little bit more from that. But in terms of the story and the main villain, he ends up becoming this really interesting idea that he's a horolog that has found some sort of humanity in him, so he's now taken a human form. He's trying to understand the emotions of humans. The only one that he does understand is fear, because obviously he sees it every single time he kills somebody. So it was a curious concept, and I was really interested in how they take it. And by the end of the first season, what I'm presuming is the first season, he became this very interesting multi-layered villain that, you know, no matter what the characters did around him, he was like, I don't understand why you're doing this. Why aren't you just accepting your fate and die? He's just the I never will understand the human spirit kind of stuff. Like, it always ends up working really well with villains. I like that. It's why I love robotic villains or alien villains that don't, like, anything that's non-human, that doesn't understand how humans are to be. I love that concept because it works really well. It gives these villains, like, of course you're going to hate them because he doesn't understand me. It's really easy to hate that. And it ended pretty well. Like, the only thing that I kind of had to laugh about is that in the last episode when Victor supposedly gets killed off, and, you know, the other characters are trying to sell it so well. Like, Mina's trying to sell her ass off. Kiri's trying to sell his ass off by the end of it, you know, calling him dad for the first time. But, I mean, anybody who's watched anime for more than, I don't know, 2 minutes can figure out when, you know when a person actually dies, because it's sudden. It's not this, like, it was implied that he was going to sacrifice himself. It's usually not that. Usually a major anime character dying is very sudden and you don't expect it. It's not something that is very blatantly obvious that it's going to happen. It's a lot more surprising. So when Victor, whenever his body disappears and it's just clothes lying on the ground, I'm like, no, he's fine. They're going to find some way to bring him back. And sure enough, they do. And he still hasn't regained his time back, so that's definitely where the second season is going to come into play, because we know that Ike's, the main villain, is not dead either, because clearly, if Victor hasn't gotten his time back, it's apparent that Ike's is not fully dead. They've just killed off a form of his, or they've just nailed down a little bit more of his body, so okay, they maybe killed 25% of him or something like that. But yeah, I love this show. It was definitely my sleeper hit of the season. I thought it was going to be something I'd drop after an episode or two, and it ended up being a 4-star show. It has still, it leaves a little bit to be desired. It's definitely not up to that final tier. It missed out on a few opportunities, even though they do recover with the end villain. But at times, Victor, who was easily one of my favorite characters, he ends up being the shell of a person for a good chunk of the series. And it bothered me after a while. And the show takes away from itself by killing villains off way too quickly. So it's just one of those things that I had enough of a problem with that, you know, I had to shock the rating down just a little bit. But it's definitely a show worthy of your time if you're into these action-y kind of animes. And any show where a guy throws cards as a weapons, like Gambit, I'm down. So last but not least, we have the second season of New Game, the lone show that second season from this one. Next season is going to be interesting because I'm going to have, obviously, Omaru-chan and third season of Food Wars. Food Wars is going to be my first third season show. I've never actually hit a third season with anime since I've started all my simulcasting, so that'll be fun. But New Game was easily my favorite show. I can't remember, did I give it? No, I don't think I gave it my favorite show of the entire year, because obviously Erased. But it was definitely my favorite show of that season. It wasn't even a question. Like, it was cute girls doing cute things with video games surrounding about it, and some of the most unique and well-written characters that I've seen in a while. Like, Hifumi is best girl. Ko is such an incredibly, like, perky yet, like she's just, like, dumb enough. Like, not dumb as intelligence dumb, but just, like, the way that she's built, like, her character is bad enough that it's good. Like, the idea that she's so lazy and so irresponsible that in her freaking workplace, you can find her like just sleeping like completely like innocent, like with her pants off and all that. So like just the idea that she doesn't care, I love that. And again, it comes off with that she came off very human. Same with Rin, which is why that relationship between Ko and Rin worked so well in the first season and why it definitely continues to work in the second. Other than that, what the second season did, it made me like characters that I didn't like too much more. The two main ones was I really got into Hajime this season. I loved her this season. In fact, like she climbed up the ladder quite a bit in terms of all the characters in the show. She was definitely easily bottom tier to I'm pretty sure she's top 5 at this point. Because right now, actually, even let me do it off the top of my head. Number 1 would definitely be Ko overall. Hifumi is definitely number 2. 3, it's probably Rin. I would probably put Hajime at 4 at this point. And Aoba's probably 5. Yeah, that's probably about how I'd write it right now. Hajime would have not been top 5 at all. She's definitely replacing I think Umiko I would have had at 5. Actually, you know what? I don't even think I'd put Aoba at 5 now. I think I'd put Christine, their big boss, at 5 now because I love this like I'm their boss, but I don't want to say anything mean to them kind of character, which I really enjoy. But yeah, no, there was a lot about the second season that improved. I didn't like Nene at all in the first season, and in this season I really started to attach to her. I really did adjust to her and like her a lot more, mainly because she, you know, has somewhat of a path to go after now instead of just being like this annoying high-pitched voice character. They definitely get a little more serious with it, which is it's a curse and a blessing for the show because I mostly like the original first season because it was just this silly cute girls doing cute things kind of show, whereas now it's trying to take a little bit more of a serious direction because Alba's now taking on a much more prominent position. She's got to deal with the hardship that is having pressure on her and being expected to do well, and she's also got to deal with Ko, who is now getting a little bit annoyed that somebody's trying to steal her spot. And by the time the season ends, we learn that Ko is leaving the studio because now that Alba's, you know, making progress, she's like, crap. I don't even know. It's not even that like crap she's catching up to me and need to improve. It's more like, okay, there's somebody else that could get to my level. There's now a fire in me again to get better because Ko has started to become complacent in the idea that she was just going to get the character designer role every time because she was that good. So that series of events kind of made the show a little bit better as it went on, because initially when it was getting serious in the early going of the show, I wasn't that interested. I was like, no, I want you to go back to the fun stuff. And as it got further down that line, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely into this now. The two new characters, was Christine in the first season? I don't remember. If she wasn't, then there's 3 new characters, but the 2 new staff members that they throw in Tsubame and Momiji, I'm starting to kind of get them now. They're probably going to be the same if there's a 3rd season. They're going to be the same as what Nene was in first season, where I didn't like her, and now in this season I like Nene a lot. It'll probably be that way for Momiji and Tsubame in the 3rd season if there is one, because I think it's also just the idea that I already thought there were enough characters, so I didn't think they needed more, and the addition of 2 just kind of, I felt, interrupted the flow that was going on. Like Momiji especially, because Momiji felt like Hifumi if she was a bit more of a bitch. Like she still has that like nervous to talk to people kind of stuff that Hifumi has, but she also just unequivocally hates Aoba because Aoba's closer to Ko. So I guess it's just that rivalry hatred. But it didn't work early on, and Tsubame was just kind of like a nobody, and then suddenly started picking a fight with Nene, and I'm like, why? Like, you're just bullying this tiny girl. Like, that's what was going on. But as the closing few episodes happened, okay, I started understanding their positions a little bit more. They started getting them to work with everybody, and it at least became a little more accessible. So all in all, like, I really did love the show as much as I loved the last season, although this season was a little less enjoyable. There were some things that I just couldn't get into as much. It wasn't as easy to get into, and that's why it's only a 4-star show instead of a 5-star show, which is what I gave New Game last time. The addition of these new characters kind of didn't mesh very well early on, and that definitely caused some problems. And then the initial serious storylines kind of put me off. Granted, they got better as it went along, but for that first little bit, I actually didn't have New Game too high on my list because I'm like, oh, I wanted to be the goofy, funny stuff again, and it wasn't doing it as much as it used to. And it started catching up, and then it started getting really good with its storylines. And I'm like, okay, so it's almost back to form. So hopefully, if there is a third season, I'll be really upset if there isn't a third season because I want them to take Ko and Rin seriously as a relationship, and it's because, like I said earlier, anime hates putting people in relationships because they like keeping everybody single. I think you need to make an exception this one time because it's very rare for us to have a legitimate lesbian couple or a legitimate gay couple, period, without it being like super flamboyant like you see a lot of the time in anime where homosexual characters tend to be very over the top or they're meant to look bad. And I think Rin and Ko is the closest you'll get to a very natural homosexual relationship, and I want to see that. I want to see them go that route. So yeah, that's everything that I finished. So we're going to jump into the award session. So normally I give a description of everything. Because this has already taken a little bit of time, like where am I at now as I'm checking? Oh, we're already past an hour. Jeez, I didn't think it was that long. But yeah, I'm going to try to condense this into 20 minutes. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to go over briefly everything, and then, I'll give my actual spiel about the winner. So first award that I usually do is the best OP or the best opening, and for those who are unsure about how I do it, it's not just the music. The animation does have partly to do with it. So 18F right off the bat, really chill music. Like it really sets the stage really well for this dream world, and the way the animation to that OP works, it's really good. Aho Girl is just super cheesy, and it changes up every week, and it's always something really funny with it. Generally speaking, Yoshiko's at the center of it, which is why I like it. Incho had one really good one that I was laughing to. The song itself isn't the greatest, but it fits the style that it is. Gamers was literally the best animation just because it was doing all these games. Like it had Monster Hunter, I believe. It had Super Smash Brothers. It did all these cool things with video games, and I loved it. It's a shame the show sucked. Jikan no Shihaisha, aka Chronos Ruler, easily the best song. For sure the best song. Just such a badass metal tune. New game, it's hard not to love a new game intro because it's the cute girls doing cute things intro. And I'm trying to think, did it win last year when I did it? It might have, or it might have been close. I can't remember, but it was definitely a good one that year. In the end, though, the winner to it is going to be Foxtail for, I can't remember what the title of the song is, but for Jikan no Shihaisha. The animation was decent. It definitely wasn't the best one. Like, if I was going to give it, if you wanted to go to the overall spectrum, maybe 18F was a good one. But the Foxtail track in this show is just that good. It has now become one of my favorite songs. And I'm kind of, like, I play Rocksmith on the PC, and a lot of people mod anime songs into the game. So I've been playing, like, a bunch of different tracks from various anime songs, and I want this one in there so badly because I want to learn how to play that song because that riff is so cool. But yeah, like, any heavy metal track is going to get my attention. Anything that has that hard edge to it is going to get my attention, and that song was just perfect. The guitar riffs are really good. Actually, even the specific sounds that it emits from the guitar, like the way they set up the distortion and the little clean guitar that happens in between. The keyboards are really good, and the vocals are dead on. Everything is perfect in that song, and that's definitely the best. Out of all the songs that I've listened to, that was easily the best one this season. Okay, best art direction. 18F, obvious reasons, the various art styles that it employs throughout each episode, depending on the dream world, including the one where it almost looked like it was being made from, it looked like an old TVO kids like kind of show that it was made on construction paper kind of deal. Like, that animation style looks so cool. Some of it was really interesting. Aho Girl had a great art direction as well. The over-the-top nature of the facial expressions and the crazy, like, supersonic speed of the characters and all the fighting and all that stuff, like, it looked really good. I always love that kind of stuff. It's the reason why, like, art direction for shows like Fooly Cooly and Azumanga Daioh, all these crazy shows, they work because they're so visually appealing to the eyes. Isekai Shokudou, mostly for the food, just because all the food looks amazingly delicious, as shows like, oh my god, what was Sweetness and Lightning, I believe it was? And then Food Wars, like, shows like that always have really good looking food and just makes you hungry and want to eat everything. Again, Chronos Ruler was up there. Mainly for its battle scenes. Its battle sequences looked amazing for this one. Like, I guess I could have put Touken Ranbu on there, but generally speaking with these awards, I try to only limit them to shows I finished. In the case of Gamers' song being on Best OP, it's literally because the other couple of shows that were on the list that I watched, I didn't like their themes at all. Like, Smartphone's song is terrible. I hate that song. And then, oh my god, what was the other? Centaur's Life, same deal. Couldn't stand the song, so I ended up putting Gamers in because it was the next closest one. But yeah, Chronos Ruler definitely had some really good art style and belonged there. And finally, New Game. It's hard not to like that animation style just because, again, it's so overly cute. It's hard not to like. But in the end, because of just how varying the art was in that show, 18F easily takes the cake. There's no question for me in that one. The art drawings alone in the intro are so good. Just this weird, like, pink and black kind of checkered thing, like even that alone got me interested in the anime just because I love the way that poster looked. I'm like, this looks like this will be really cool. And once we get to the actual show, like, just the difference in art styles that each world takes and how the facial expressions are so good, and then just the wacky, like, trippy stuff that you see, like, it's so well done. And rarely do shows grab my attention in that aspect, and this show did just beyond that. Alright, so best character design, we move on to specifically the designs of the characters themselves, and facial expressions also end up being a big part of it. Some shows literally win on that. So right off the bat, Aho Girl completely falls into that category because, again, just unbelievably great facial expressions, the over-the-topness of it, the absurdity of it, worked really well. Centaur's Life, a lot of different characters. Monster Girls make that really easy to do. Obviously, when you have all these different races to animate, there's a lot more work that has to get put into them so they don't look lifeless. They got to look some sense of human even though they're not. And that worked out really well with them. I wish I put the title in for that, and then I could have remembered what Isekai with Smartphone Tomo is. In Another World with My Smartphone. I knew it was something like that. But that one was really good. Again, with the variance in characters, you had so many different people to go after. Even the spells and the facial expressions and the battle sequences in that show, like, they still look really pretty, so there was a lot to go with that. Chronos Ruler, same deal. Blaze alone pretty much covers a lot of the good facial expressions in that show. Not to mention the battles, again, like I said, with the art design. And the New Game falls into the same category where the variance in characters, the cuteness of it, and just perfect ecchi sequencing, like, all that stuff worked really well for the show. And in the end, just like it won, I'm pretty sure it won last time, my best character design is going to go to New Game. Because, again, when you have a show that there are double digits of characters that are visually appealing to me, it's really hard not to like the show. And because the show isn't going over, it doesn't have to worry about battle scenes, it doesn't have to worry about all these extreme things that they got to worry about animating, they can focus so much on making everything around them, like, beautiful, whether it's the backdrops, whether it's the characters themselves. And in this case, with the character design, that's what it does. It makes every character memorable. You can recognize them very easily. They all have their own unique traits to them, their own unique looks, and it all works absolutely perfectly with each other. They all mesh very well. Okay. Story. This was a tough one to judge because most of the shows I finished didn't really have one. So on that basis, I mean, you'll see the list here. I don't even really go into it because there's really only one show that falls into the category in terms of story. The only reason I didn't put Aho Girl in there is because it was a 4-coma sketch, so it's really hard to. Yeah, I'll just flip through because honestly, other than Chronos Ruler, they had a bit of a story, but it wasn't that great. 18F wins easily. Easily. Not even because of the whole overarching storyline through the 13 episodes it has, just because of every individual story, and honestly, just for Yuko's story alone in the 3rd episode. I could literally say that 18F's 3rd episode would win best story out of everything that I watched altogether, because that was the one episode that really got me emotionally invested into it, because I felt like it was unjust that they were letting a character die like that. And because 18F is able to mesh all these different serious stories with that have to do with these really tough subjects like murder, like terminal illness, like bulimia, like depression and bullying and idol culture and all these things. They were all able to make these individual stories that really resonated very well, and to make a story that covered everything along with it and still be interesting and still have me kind of asking questions by until the last episode. That's a real difficult feat to take, and that's why 18F was definitely one of my top animes and why it was one that I managed to finish. Okay, best comedy. This is pretty straightforward. Aho Girl, obviously over the top comedy, never grows old with me. Centaur no Nayami, a lot of really good stuff when it wanted to get away from the serious talk. Smartphone, pretty easy, a lot of good harem humor. Chronos Ruler, just for Victor, just bullying the crap out of his son because apparently he doesn't eat pasta through his nose or can't eat pasta through his nose. I still don't get what the line of that was. I don't get what the point of that line is. But just the interaction between them, it was always funny. And the new game, again, just really cute humor, a lot of fun to it. In the end, the easy winner is Aho Girl, just because of the over-the-topness, the absurdity, the Azumanga Daioh-like comedy to it, where, especially in the first few episodes, I was in stitches because I was laughing so hard. There's so much to love about this show, and comedy is what sells it. That is what sold the anime. Straight up on its comedy, straight up on Yoshiko being this extreme dunce cap, and then having all these characters trying to fit around her and try to just balance it out, and failing to do so in such a funny nature. It was such a fun show to watch because of that. My personal favorite award, the most what the fuck award, to shows that in different ways just have me asking that very question. It depends on whether it's being extremely weird that I can't explain what the hell I'm watching, being so over the top funny that my brain's like, what's going on? That kind of stuff. So 18F obviously falls in that with the dream world, with all the crazy stuff you see. Aho Girl with its over the top humor and absurdity works with that very well. Centaur's Life specifically just for the Holocaust episode falls into that category. Smartphone for just every time Toya walks into a situation and solves it within one swipe of his smartphone, it's just like, how the hell, like, what the heck, man? And then Chronos Ruler, mainly for the early going with the horror logs being like, holy crap, what the hell is that thing? In the end, once again, Aho Girl takes the award because of its absurdity. Just the idea of, you know, watching an anime girl suplexing a dog so it stops chasing people. It's so funny. I love that. It's that absurdity that makes me remember why I like anime so much. In the same way that shows like Fooly Cooly, shows like Azumanga, I keep saying Azumanga Daioh, and that's for that reason. And then even for a show like Keijo, which really had no business being as funny as it was, and because it was so over the top and so unbelievably unique, it was easy to love that. And again, because Aho Girl manages to be this extremely weird and absurd anime, it's very easy to like it because of that. Best Ecchi, pretty straightforward if you're into that kind of stuff. Don't even really have to go in terms with it. So right off the bat, like I'll just give the winner to Smartphone, because it definitely had the most, because New Game normally would have won, but the problem with New Game this time is that it definitely strayed away from that to tell a more serious story. Centaur's Life tried a little bit and managed to do a pretty good job in the final episode, but again, it's really hard to be interested in a centaur. That's a little difficult. But in terms of Smartphone, it was really easy to get into because there was a lot of that. And for the main characters alone, specifically Yae, who I just got super into in this show. Yeah, there's a lot about the show that really falls into that category. There really wasn't a show this season that I watched and finished that falls into the category of extreme ecchi, not like a show like Keijo did, not like Monster Musume. This show is just, it had the best quality of it. When it was there, it was really good. Okay, so we got best screen caps. So basically anything that I posted onto Twitter and ended up putting at the bottom of every show's review, all the pictures that I did. So that's going to be what this award is. So we got 5 for you. First one you'll see is from Aho Girl. That is the main character, like, basically holding a girl hostage with, like, the most, like, terrible, like, oh, look, like, he's just holding his hand up to her like he's holding a knife. And it's the absurdity of that. Centaur's life, I enjoyed this section where a girl thinks, even though Nozomi is wearing a top for a swimsuit, she still pulls her bottoms out to check if there's anything there because she's that curious. Because it's like, you kind of look like a guy, which is the butt end of the joke for Nozomi the entire episode, or the entire series, in that they think she's a guy. Gamers gets one more chance in this one with, I think it's Karen is her name, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. Where she just has that deer in the headlights, I'm so in love kind of look, which I think is just a great like, it's a great symbol for what, you know, deep down inside, like, the average person looks like when they're in love with someone. Like, they're just drooling and just, like, super in the clouds on it. Smartphone gets one in just Toya with a friggin' gun blade. Like, that's all. It's a gun blade. That's exactly why it's there. And then last but not least is New Game with Hifumi again taking center stage because her face is just so easy to just want to, you know, squeeze as Ko does in that picture. In the end, I decided this was a tough one because I didn't really have that obvious one that was like, okay, that's easily the winner. I've had that so many times when I do this category. This is probably the hardest one ever. And Aho Girl ends up being the winner to this one because, again, it was the case of the randomness of him literally pulling a girl aside. I don't even remember what the situation was that he tried to get it was to get Yoshiko to stop whatever she was doing. I don't remember what it was. But just the idea that he takes this poor girl, unsuspecting girl, and just, like, holds her hostage like that and acts like he's going to straight up, like, I don't know, snap her neck or something. I loved it. It was so random. And again, it goes to show just how just over the top and absurd the show was. And this screen cap really shows that. Then my personal favorite, I think, the sexiest screen cap that I took. And this is a first too, because for the first time we have a male character on the sheet for this one. So the first one up is Nozomi from the final episode of Centaur, where she gets a little too close with slimes, and, you know, slimes do as slimes do in anime. Isekai Shokudou finally gets up on a list for one of these things because the first episode with, I don't think they ever gave that red-haired dragon girl a name, but she just looks gorgeous in that picture. Obviously, Smartphone gets in there with, you know, the classic cliche of a harem anime where he walks in and all the girls changing because nobody knows how to lock a door in anime. I'm kind of getting the instinct to want to make, like, either articles or videos on, like, some of these ridiculous anime tropes that I'm like, man, like, if this is in real life, like, what the hell would happen? And the fact that nobody apparently locks their door in anime is one of them. Victor holding A's radar hostage in the early episodes of Chronos Ruler falls into that category too. Same way in, like, the best screen cap being Aho Girl, where he's holding somebody hostage. The idea that he's trying to hold this, essentially a goddess, hostage while she is undressed, that was one of those shots that's like, oh man, you are in so much trouble, dude. And the fact that he came out of that alive is amazing in itself. And then speaking of Victor, obviously, for all the male character lovers out there, you basically got one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best ecchi caps of a male character I've seen in a long time. I think the last time I've seen one that was this well done was probably, oh my god, what was the character's name in Phantasy Star Online 2? I can't remember his name now, but he was in the hot spring and you get full-on boy butt in it, and I was really impressed they actually put some work into that, because generally, when anime does ecchi, they don't put any work into it for guys, because they think that there's no audience for it. And I think we're now at the point where, because the LGBTQ community is becoming much more of a prominence, it's a lot easier for anime to justify doing it, because now there is an audience for this sort of thing. So who wins? That's a good question. And I think you will be surprised that actually the winner is going to be Victor, because they actually did something that is very unusual, which is put some work into, you know, a male-generated shot, because very often it's nothing, and then usually it comes out very flat, they don't show anything, or even it's even meant to look funny, whereas in this case, it's just there. Even though they do make a bit of a joke out of it, they don't half-ass it, like, they don't hide anything, they don't shy away from it, which is really impressive, because a lot of shows really try their hardest not to go that route. Even though it's easy to throw a billion shots of girls showering and changing, but when a guy actually does it, it's so rare, and then when it's done, it's usually not done in very high quality, so for a show to actually do that is really impressive. And I'm just checking my timestamp, and I am definitely not hitting that 20 minutes that I thought. I see, this is how it is. I ramble too much. I'm getting close to the end here, but again, I can't help myself. Next up, best couple or duo. I tried to do both once, and I couldn't come up with 5 like actual relationship couples that I could ship, and then 5 duos. So I just started making it one and the same. So first up, see, if I just flipped the pages enough, I'd find his first name, Akaru. That was the main guy from Aho Girl. So him and Incho were one of them, just because of the absurdity of him stalking her everywhere. Akuro and Yoshiko again. That's a pairing that I hope doesn't actually come to be. I don't know if they'll make a second season of Aho Girl, but if they do, I hope they stick to the format that he has no interest in her. They play off each other really well. I look at them more as a duo than a couple, because they play off each other so well. Yoshiko just brings out the best in him, and it always ends up being just hilarious. Kiri and Victo from Cronus Ruler definitely also fall into that category. They bring out the best of each other. A father-son dynamic that really doesn't actually play a father-son dynamic till the very end, and it's more like just two best friends that hate each other for the one quirk that they have. Kiri hates Victor for being the loof that he is, and Victor just doesn't like Kiri because he takes everything seriously. So there was that. Same, I always got to go with Ko and Rin from New Game, because it's really easy to like a couple that feels so natural. It's very easy. Because that it's very rare for anime to have couples, whether they imply they're actually in a relationship or not, but to actually have couples that really come off like they could be perceived as being a real thing. It's very rare. And I always appreciate it when they happen, because most of the time a couple in anime tends to be either somewhat fake, or they're just so overly exaggerated that you don't believe it. Whereas with Ko and Rin, I actually do believe that they're not just friends, that they really do have that mutual care for each other and that mutual love for each other. And then last, for New Game gets one as well, Nene and Umiko, they really ramped up their friendship. Like, those two play off each other really well, because Nene being the over-the-top character she is, and Umiko being the super serious, they play off each other so well. The same way that Kiri and Victo do. And it's so easy to really enjoy the two. So, as much as I'd like to give it to Kiri and Victo, as much as I'd love to give Nene and Umiko a shot, it's too easy. It has to be Ko and Rin. There's nothing to it. You can't deny a relationship that comes off as real as it does. And it comes off in the sense of that, they obviously do both love each other, but Ko, I don't think, really understands just how much Rin truly adores her. Like Ko, when it comes to Rin, she looks at Rin as like this person that she relies on. Like, she's the one person that actually gives two shits about her beyond work. And in the case of Rin, like, Rin looks at Ko as this person that she loves so much about, and yet it frustrates her so much that there's just this one characteristic about her that she's trying so hard to fix, or trying so hard to at least suppress enough that she can unequivocally just love her with everything she's got, and it makes that relationship so natural, because there are flaws there. There are legitimate natural flaws to it, and that's what makes them so good. So I don't have a list this time, because there was only one that falls into this category. Usually, like last season, I tried for the first time to have a sexiest male character in this list, because I think it was only fair, considering I spent so much time fawning over the various ecchi that we see on the female side, that I figure, okay, I gotta give my female audience, because I do have a female audience, which I don't know how you guys. I say guys unequivocally too. It's just an instinct. It's a habit. But I'm surprised that I have a female audience, given the topics that I do, because considering in this wave where feminism is where it is, where saying anything of that aspect when it comes to female characters, whether it's fictional or not, it tends to rub people the wrong way. And the fact that I have a female audience is kind of impressive. So I figured it was only fair if I did the same for guys. And unfortunately, I didn't really have anything this season beyond the winner, which is Victor. And for obvious reasons, which is why I'm using the same picture for this one as I did the other one. But yeah, That was really the only one that got my attention. Do I really need to say anything more? That picture pretty much explains. It's worth 1,000 words and then some. So we'll go on to the Hottest Girl award. So this one was a little tougher because a lot of the female characters that I really shared an interest in was not because of their looks this time around. Generally with anime, it's easy to find at least a few that look really good, and you just kind of don't worry about anything else. Whereas in this specific season, a lot of the female characters that I really enjoyed were all based on their personality, based on their characteristics, based on their uniqueness. But if I'm going to give you 5 from this season, Insho was the easy runaway from Aho Girl. Love the crap out of her. She has a great look to her, and I love blue hair. I'm going to horribly butcher this name. Apparently that's the name for the Dragon Girl as I pull this up. Akanoju, I think it's pronounced. But I just call her Red Hair Dragon Girl because that's really what she is. She is drop dead gorgeous. Osradar falls into the same category from Chronos Ruler. Just wonderfully gorgeous girl. And then we got 2 from New Game. We got Hifumi, who I believe I had last year, and I think Ko I did as well. I think both of them made the list last year as well. Hifumi she's definitely she's in secret really hot. But because she plays that innocent, shy exterior who gets nervous around anything, you obviously look at her as being more of a cute girl, but realistically she has a gorgeous look to her. And then Ko, just because I look at Ko in that she's normal girl hot. She's not like your average anime girl who is so overly exaggerated in terms of looks. Like she's got that huge butt or the huge boobs or the over the top pretty face. Ko has that look of her that really looks like who in real life would be like a supermodel, whereas in anime, like what she looks like is nowhere near the tier. But I always put her on this list because that's what she is. She's like the hottest normal looking girl that I've seen in anime in a long time. In the end, though, I'm giving this award to Akanoju, or the Dragon Girl, because, well, there are 2 things that make it really easy. One, red hair. I'm a sucker for red hair. And then when it comes to anime, darker skinned girls just seem to work really well. It's a great mixture of stuff. So you get 2 of my favorite things, you put them together, and you give her that. She's blatantly designed to be sexy. She's not designed to be beautiful or cute. She's straight up designed to be super hot, and they do a great job with that. The Secret Award for the Sexiest Girl. This falls into girls that on the surface you would not believe to be a girl that would fall on the hotter list, but through whether it's like your ecchi cliches or whether it's just through like a swimsuit episode or something like that, you find a character that falls in that category. So Yoshiko, oddly enough, for as dumb as she is and as for as ridiculous as she is, she still ends up being a rather really gorgeous looking girl. Is it Linz or Lindsay? I think it's Lindsay. And it's because she out of the 2 sisters, she's obviously the ones that has a more let's just say filled up body. Ye is kind of the same reason. She wears these really like old school what's the era I'm thinking of? What's the era in Japan? Like feudal era. She has that kind of like kimono sort of look to her, the sort of like classy samurai kind of deal. And yet she's probably one of the hotter girls that I've seen the entire series. I would have put her on the list before, but I really wanted to put Ko on there because I felt like that needed to be represented. So Ye would have been the easy. She was definitely number 6. She would have been on the list if I extended the number, but I stick to 5. Aletta from Isekai Shokudou gets 1 vote for this because she has that really cute look to her, but she really does have like a look beyond that's actually really attractive. And then last but not least, from Chronos Ruler's Mina, mostly because even though she has that, she does dress like she is like looking for attention in the way that most anime girls are designed to. She does have a body type that doesn't quite fall into that category. She doesn't have like your traditional like giant boobs and all that stuff that you're used to seeing. In the end, Ye easily gets the award. Like I said, she would have been the runner-up on the list beforehand, so it makes it pretty easy for me to give her the award on this one because she really is like a gorgeous girl. So yeah, what else can I say? Last but not least, we're gonna have the Prettiest Girl, which is more like, okay, this is the ones that were designed to be really cute, and anime being what it is, that's, holy crap, that was like almost every character this time. So to get 5 of them was a real pain in the ass, and this was definitely the list that I spent the most time on. Kyoko and Nozomi from Centaur no Nayami fell into this. Kyoko really grew on me as the series went on. By about the second half, that's when I started being like, wow, like I don't know why I didn't notice how like really well designed she was. Nozomi was always there. She was definitely in that category for the longest time. I've always been big on tomboy characters in anime anyway, so it's really easy to go with that one. Lindsay again gets on here. Again, she just has that really pretty, elegant look to her. I would have put a Yay on this list, but I don't think she falls into the cute category as much as Lindsay does, because Lindsay has a more meek and shy look to her. Wow, I went like an hour and a half, and it finally took me that long to burp. That's surprising. But yeah, Lindsay had that very more adorable look to her, whereas Yay was more of just a elegance kind of look to her. Christina actually falls into that on New Game a little bit. She definitely has a much more older look, so it's hard to get the cuteness out of that, but because of how she reacts when trying to talk to people and trying to talk to her coworkers whenever she has something to say to them that she doesn't know how to react, like she does have that very natural like shyness to her that a lot of anime characters tend to over exaggerate, whereas she kind of comes off a little more realistic in that sense. She just shows it on her face rather than just thinking about it in her head, which is what we normally do. We don't normally have that shy look that anime characters have because, well, not only would that hurt our muscles making that face, but what we see on an anime character's face is usually what we think. And I think it's that kind of part of Christina's personality that makes her fall into this category. And then last but not least, Hifumi, just because, again, the innocence and the facial expressions that she makes, like it's hard not to make her completely adorable. It's why she was best girl back in I'm pretty sure I made her best girl when the first season came out, because she was just, every time she was on screen, she was just a bundle of joy, and you couldn't help but smile. But she gets dethroned this time around because Nozomi from Centaur was just that good. And like I said, tomboys in anime always fit really well with me. They always work. And in the case of Nozomi, they made this perfect mixture of, she's a smaller girl, she's got short hair, she's not overly endowed anywhere, like it's not like she's not designed to be for the eyes, she's designed to be just this really wonderful personality, but she has this very adorable look to her. And even when the one, I can't remember which episode it was, I think it was 3 or 4, where they dress her in much more feminine clothing, put her in a dress and giving her some hair extensions so she looks a lot more feminine. Even then, it's like, no, stick to the tomboy stuff. You look so much cuter that way. And it worked perfectly for her. We got 3 awards left. It's now the most important awards, the Best Character Awards and the Best Show. So, Best Male Character. Haruto from 18F. Great, because he meshed so well with all these varying personalities, whether it was the murderous girl in episode 2, whether it was Yuko in episode 3, whether it was the crazy idol girl in, I can't remember which, I think it was episode 8 or 9, I believe. But he worked really well with everybody. Akaru, I think it's Akaru, because you gotta put that little bit of into it because syllables in Japan are weird. He was fantastic. Just to be able to be the guy that like completely trashes Yoshiko every time she gets out of hand. It works so well. Toya as the perfectly cliched harem anime guy, just perfectly well put together, and just the idiotic like level of dumb that he is and not seeing anything around him. Just, it was very well done, and the idea that he also just walked into every situation so nonchalantly and just fixed the problem. It worked so well. I loved it. And then Kiri and Victor from Chronos Ruler definitely fall into that category. Both of them were fantastic characters. Kiri being the super serious and Victor being the super goofy, they meshed, like I said earlier when I was talking about best couples, they meshed off each other so well. And even individually, they have their own positives that really put them ahead of a lot of characters that I normally watch when it comes to anime. Because, like I said, a lot of guys are just very boring and one-dimensional in anime. In the end, Akaru is going to take it easily. anytime you can get a character that has that like, what's the, I know it's like a bad boy thing in anime, but I'm trying to think what they usually call it. Like usually like a punk, where he just wants to fight everything, and which is funny because they have a basically your punk guy that also is the blonde dude. I can't remember if they ever gave him a name. I can't remember. I either way, Agadu really shows himself as being a standalone when it comes to guys, because he definitely is grounded in terms of being as normal can get for anime, especially when it comes to that show. He is as normal as that show allows you to be, because you aren't really allowed to be normal in that show, and because he has to have the overwhelming fighting ability to handle Yoshiko. No matter how many times he knocks her around, she still keeps getting up, because for some reason just that skull ain't shattering. And the way that he meshes with Yoshiko and Incho and even the Gal girls is just, he makes every character so much better than they already are. And any character that can take another character and make them 10 times better, that's always a fantastic character to go along with an anime. You need those. 2 awards to go. Best Girl. This one was a really tough one to put together because there were so many this year. Incho from Aho Girl gets one of them, because I just, even though like she is such a friggin' stalker creep, but it's just her refusal to acknowledge that anything she's doing is wrong. It just makes it's so absurd, and I love the fact that she's just like, no, I'm just gonna break into this guy's house, and because I want to just look at him, and no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing it for the good of the disciplinary committee, I swears. She was just a friggin' ball of unbridled creepy energy, and I loved it. Nozomi from Centaur Nayami is back on the list. Again, same reasons that I explained earlier with her being the cutest girl. Like, just the tomboy nature of hers. Her voice actress was perfect for her character. They fit so well. Her design was really good, and the way that she acts around people is very easy to relate to and very natural, which is why I attached to her really quickly when the show started. Even though the show started off slowly, I attached to her immediately for obvious reasons. Same goes for Yae. The show for smartphones was a little slow to start, but Yae really got me interested early on. Just the elegant anime girls tend to really fall really well with me, because they come off a lot more realistic, because they're not over the top, either insane or, like, I guess bitchy. Because usually with anime girls, they tend to be either really hyperactive or like tsundere, which I don't, which in some characters I do like, but in some cases I don't. And in Yae's case, she's right in the middle, where you can look at her and think, oh yeah, she's just your average like girl next door kind of girl, which is perfect. Those always work really well in anime because they're rare, they're in very short supply. And same with New Game, Hifumi and Ko. Again, I think they both made the list when they were up as in the first season. Hifumi, again, facial expressions alone put her on this list, because you can't not smile with her. And then Ko, because, again, she comes off very natural with some very legitimate human-like flaws that a lot of anime characters just don't have. I think Ko last time won it. And as much as I like to give it to her again, because a lot of what made her so interesting and fun was kind of taken away for a more serious role in this season, Nozomi from Centaur is going to take the award. And I don't say that like regrettingly, like I'm not mad that Nozomi's taken the award, because Nozomi, like I said earlier, she is one of the better characters I've seen, and in a show that really struggled to find its footing and was having a hard time nailing good characters down, because they tried to play too much of a social game, that it really struggled to put some character growth in there, because everybody was too busy talking about race. Nozomi, on the other hand, is able to step away from all the bullshit that the show tries to put into play, and still comes off as a very real and unover-exaggerated character, even though everything around her is so completely exaggerated, especially when it comes to people trying to figure out whether she's male or female. Which, like I said with tomboys, I love that idea that, they get so upset when people mistake them for being a boy, and the way that they react to it every single time, it's always funny to me. Like, taking Kigali from Gundam Seed, for example, when Athrun is about to kill her off, and she lets out that girlish shriek when he has a knife to her, and she just goes, "You're a girl?" And she's like, "Well, fucking course I am. I love that dynamic about them. Taking a quick drink break here because I've been talking for an hour 45 minutes and I am parched off my ass for one final award because I'm going to have to talk a lot about this one. So, best show. I'm going to take my drink break actually in a second once I go through the nominees. 18F for being a show that really tied so much together, so many really good individual stories, and having a pretty good finish to it. That was a great show. 18F definitely gets up there for its story. That is what's 18F's selling point is. It's its story and its unique art. Aho Girl gets up there because it's over-the-top absurd comedy, makes it shine so friggin' bright that you can't ignore it. If you like that kind of absurd comedy, this is the show for you. This was definitely one of the funnier shows I've watched in a long time. Smartphone is up there because, again, I absolutely adored this over-the-top. The main character is so overpowered, it's insane. And it almost like annoys you that this guy is so easily handling every problem that comes before him. And then, like I said earlier, when it came to my review of the show, the idea that the show actually does what a lot of anime refuses to do, which is to not only acknowledge relationships, loving relationships, but to actually go through with it and address the idea of a harem idea where there are multiple girls going for the guy, and for them to actually take a shot at a lot of anime that ignore that. It was really easy for me to like that show. Chronos Ruler is also on the list because it was a show that I felt had no business being any good and ended up well exceeding my expectations and did a lot of things that I never would have expected. It had some really strong characters in there. The battling was so well animated. The story actually didn't end up ending terribly like I thought it could have. There's a lot going for it. And then last but not least, the second season, New Game is obviously up there because I loved the first show that much that it's kind of hard not to nominate it, especially when there's only 6 shows. New Game continued to do what it does very well, which is the cute girls doing cute things aspect of it, but they also managed to put in this really good, serious, realistic, in a working environment story where you do have to climb up the ladder, and in order to climb up the ladder, somebody's got to fall, or somebody has to leave. And the idea that they were able to address it and still keep its very lighthearted nature was really impressive. So that leaves the odd man out, which was Centaur's Life. And Centaur's Life, it was the lone show that didn't have more than 3 stars. And again, it's a show that had a lot of potential, but because it does a lot of things wrong and can't concentrate on being one specific kind of show, it makes it really hard to enjoy it because there were a lot of episodes that I liked, but also a lot of episodes that I did not get into. And there were cases where I wanted to drop it, and I managed to hang on to it. So yeah, drink break time as I spend the next 10 minutes gushing about the show that wins. I'm going to be chugging a ton of water after I'm done this. I'm surprised my voice is still here. I think it's the idea of having a deep voice that makes it a little bit easier to run with. But the show of the season for me it was really tough to go between Aho Girl, 18F, and this show that won. Smartphone, as much as I would like to annoy people by putting 18F as my winner because 18F was the one that I really didn't understand why anybody didn't like, or that nobody just seemed to get into. Smartphone, by the time we got to the final 3 to 4 episodes, it really it continued to grow on me. It was the kind of show, while some shows like Aho Girl was trailing off, Centaur's Life was going a little bit weird, New Game just wasn't doing the same things that made me love it as much as before, and Chronos Ruler was just a right down the middle good show every episode, but it was never great. Smartphone started off good and just kept getting better. They kept taking more really, really clever shots at different shows. They managed to nail down a lot of things that anime just refuses to do. And like I said, I'm probably going to end up making a video or an article on it at some point with the idea of just how anime outright refuses to talk about relationships with their characters. They refuse to put any of their characters in a relationship. The show does a lot of things that most don't, whereas they go all in on some of these themes. They straight up talk about, what it actually would be like between a bunch of these characters that are all vying for the same one person's love. And it's handled actually relatively maturely when you think about it, because in the end, I don't think I said it when I was talking about my review of the show. In the end, Toya tells them all, look, I know that we want to do this thing where all four of you are going to marry me, because in this world it's normal, it's acceptable, and it's actually quite commonplace. But I am like, and like I said, I estimate he's 14 years old, so he's thinking like, dude, I'm like 14 years old, like I'm not mature, I have to get older. You know, I'm not telling you that I'm not going to marry you all at some point, but there is no way that at this point in time, in my current age and my current state, with the knowledge that I have, that I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready to take on this responsibility. And the idea that he handles that in such a mature fashion, whereas in most cases the anime would never even talk about it, first of all, but if they did, the main character would essentially like just dance around it, or he would basically ignore it. He would outright ignore it. He would like feign ignorance of it, that anything was going on. Whereas this show straight up tackles it head on and does it in a very responsible way, rather than trying to put it to comedy, which is what most harems do, and they kind of just leave you on a cliffhanger with it. Smartphone does so many things well. It has a really good look to it. Its animation is really good. The characters all are really good. There wasn't really a single character that I didn't like. There was enough absurdity in there to get that kind of comedy in there. There is some pretty solid ecchi art in there, so if you're into that sort of thing, there was definitely something for you. There isn't... The only thing that it doesn't really have as much of a story, but it didn't need one. Its basic premise is this guy is in a fantasy, like, video game-like world where his one weapon is a smartphone, and that smartphone allows him to pretty much do anything he wants. And he just basically walks into any situation that would be an entire video game devoted to it and defeats it in 5 seconds. And it's that absurdity that really made me fall in love with the show. And when you couple that with some really responsible storytelling, some really good characters in Yae, in Linz, in Lean, hell, even in a Kohaku, the friggin' giant white tiger that turns into this tiny kitten when it transforms into a smaller form. There's so much about the show that's to love, and it's so easy that it's the kind of show that it's one that I know it's going to be very few, that I'm one of the few that actually likes. Like, Outbreak Company is a show that also falls in that category. It's one of those shows that everybody seems to just think is hot garbage, and I actually appreciate for what it does and for the steps it takes, where a lot of shows avoid it. So that's why, as tough a decision it was, I still think it was relatively easy for me in the end to give Smartphone that award, because Smartphone, by the time the season ended, that was the show I was looking forward to the most, and that was the show that I definitely have a lot more to say about, that I enjoyed, rather than, you know, a couple of things here and there. So, that is your look at the entire season that I watched, I should say, of 2017. So we're just under 2 hours as I'm finishing this off. So, if you guys are still hanging in after that long-ass time, you know, thanks for listening. I don't know why you're doing it, because, kind of rambled quite a bit there and wasted a lot of time talking about it. But I mean, this season all in all was, there was some good stuff, but this was definitely a weaker season for me. And I think also with me being a lot pickier and me refusing to use other services for shows and just sticking to Crunchyroll, it does kind of limit what I can watch. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about Maiden Abyss and Princess Principal and other shows like that. There's definitely some stuff that, when people post them all up on torrent or something, if I ever bother to remember, there definitely are some shows from this season that I need to watch. But given the 13 that I picked, and I only ended up finishing 6, it was definitely a weaker season than others, although it could just be a manifestation of the fact that I'm not trying to devote as much time to it anymore, and I'm just getting a little pickier, because now that I'm 3 years into watching simulcasts, I'm now a lot more certain of what I'm going to like, and I'm now at a point where I'm allowed, and in my head I'm justified in choosing shows to drop immediately, because it's not going to fall into the wheelhouse that I'm used to. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this entire, I guess you can call it a podcast, because it's not really a video, even though it's on YouTube. It's more like a reflection of the entire season. when it comes to next season, I'm going in completely blind. I'm not doing a preview on the season. I know I said it on the blog page earlier. I'm not going to do a preview to it because I want to try for at least one season to not know anything about any of the shows that I'm watching, so that, say in the case of Aho Girl or oh my god, Love Tyrant, like shows like that where it just shocks me and just kind of surprises me outright, I don't want to know a thing about it. So I want to just start watching a show and be like, holy crap, what am I watching? Whereas with a lot of story-driven shows, I kind of get the idea of what it is. Like, the biggest example was Gakko Garashi or School Live. The problem with that show is I knew what the premise was before I watched it. So that first episode where you see what's actually going on and you see what the reality of the show is, which I won't spoil it for those who haven't watched the show yet because it's such a cool turn of events. If I had gone into that blind and not known what was going on, the difference in the reaction that I would take to it would have been so much bigger. I would have been like, jaw would have been on the floor had I watched that show blind. And that's what I'm hoping for now with this season, is that I'll look at the posters for these shows when I come across them on Crunchyroll, because I believe they start popping out on the 3rd, which is Tuesday. Yeah. So I'll start looking at some of the artwork and say, okay, this looks kind of interesting. And I'll maybe read the synopsis that Crunchyroll puts in and hope that they haven't spoiled anything. So I'll get a sense of what I'm looking at. And hopefully I'll find some gems that I wouldn't have checked out in the first place because of that. So yeah, that's everything for this. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. You can, I guess I should plug everything before I leave. So my blog page is csradical.com. You can follow me on Twitter at csradical. I'll have it in the comments below, or not the comments below, the description below. Yeah, that's all I can say. It was a pretty decent anime season. Some real gems in there, and hopefully the next season will have some really good stuff that I can talk about too, because I'm really looking forward to at least Yumaru's 2nd season, Food Wars 3rd season, and Desiree, which if you have the chance to, look into that and just see how long it's taken this show to get made. And it's why I hope that because it's taken that long to get produced, that it ends up being possibly one of the best shows I watched this season. So with that being said, once again, because I say it like 10 times in a video, thanks for watching, and you stay classy, anime fans.